So I have now resumed recording, and I would invite Rowan Carroll to start us off. Thank you, Rowan.
Tēnā koutou katoa, I mihi mahana tēnei kia koutou. My name's Rowan Carroll and I'm the director of the New Zealand Police Museum, which is about 20 k's north of Wellington on State Highway 1. We are a small museum and my perspective might support, I hope, those of you who come from smaller institutions. I was very lucky earlier this week to be a part of an international museum and cultural heritage facility conversation. And what I really gathered from that was how fortunate we are here in New Zealand with the leadership and guidelines that we've been offered. So at each alert level, it's been very clear what we are allowed to do. So we're unlike a lot of other countries. So for example, the museum and cultural sector in the US and the UK are having to make decisions in a leadership vacuum. They're of course generally making very, very good decisions, but they're having to be quite brave in a very difficult situation. So for us, going into alert level 2, my largest concern is around my staff and ensuring their health and well-being. Some of our front of house staff are at risk of a poor outcome should they actually contract COVID-19. So they are at the forefront of my thinking. We're also on a campus of police recruits, and it's imperative that we do not bring police into disrepute by not following the guidelines that we've been given. So, as I said, our museum is small and we will act cautiously. So indoor gatherings are allowed to be 100 people, but we know that that's not safe for us. For us to allow everyone in our museum to have a 2-metre physical spacing, we would have a maximum of 60 people. So we'll be monitoring that at all times. We're aware also that there are a number of pinch points around our museum. We only have one entrance and exit, but we also provide activities which are hands-on types, which we recognise will create clusters. And so we're going to be removing those. That's one of the things that we intend to do. We do. We have a lot of hands-on stuff that we're just going to have to take away and bring back at a later date. With regards to contact tracing, we are hoping that there'll be a QR app available, but we're certainly not guaranteed that. So our intention is that we would just have an Excel spreadsheet that our front of house staff would use to populate with the information that our visitors give us. So we're also going to have a very soft opening. What we will do is reignite all our opening hour information online. Certainly won't be doing any advertising. And hopefully we will just be attracting those smaller family groups or friendship groups into the museum, and it will be manageable. Of course, we'll be using all the recommended hygiene cleaning on all of our surfaces, toilet doors, things like that, our contactless EFTPOS machine, keeping everything clean and monitored. And that's really the way that we're going to approach it. So I hope that's helpful, and I'm more than happy to talk about anything else people would like to know from a small museum perspective.
Kia ora, Rowan. That's really good to think about what those considerations are for your institution and its special circumstances, particularly that relationship with the police, which is such a vital one. Craig, please unmute yourself and tell us your thoughts.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Craig Le Quesne. I am, for my normal day job, the Chief Information Officer at Te Papa. For the last few weeks, I have been co-leader with Te Here on our, what we're calling our recovery group. So at Te Papa, we were quite well placed when it came to our business continuity for our infrastructure, our building. We literally, from how we do our work, we literally picked up our computers, walked out, and we had a pretty much work from home instance where we could access all of our repositories and all of our stuff. So working from home's been reasonably seamless experience for us. Where we are like the rest of you is our business model has been completely devastated. So that's actually the crux of this, that it's become really, really obvious now that there's two types of business continuity. There's that one where you walk out the door and everything works, and then there's a how do you resurrect your business model or adapt it, and that's what we're really quite highly focused on. For us, 40% of our income is from commercial activity, whether that be conferencing, which was one of the first things to be impacted on. We started receiving postponements and cancellations from the end of February, and it'll be one of the last things to come back online. You know, cafe, shop, all those things that a lot of you would have experience with and look for revenue generation from. So with regards to that, we've split our thought about how we move to level 2 into two schools of thought. One is, or two work streams really. One is what we've been calling our back of house re-entry. So what is it we've got to do to get our staff back in safe, secure, feeling like they're back there? That work is well underway. This afternoon we briefed all of our managers, and we've made it quite autonomous for our managers to have discussions with their staff and given them high information, and we'll be doing the normal contact tracing, things like that. The other line of work is what we call the front of house opening. So what is it we've got to do to the front of house? For us, that is, it's hard and it's easy. I say it's hard because we've got so many different types of business activities happening within that front of house space. We have education facilities, we have groups, we have tours, front of house tours, back of house tours. We also have a shop, cafe, and the conferencing. And then most importantly, we're a museum, an experience, and we're working on that. So a bit like Rowan talked about, really key to us is making sure our staff are safe and confident and comfortable about what they're doing. And we too aren't expecting the hordes of people to come in. You know, I think 40% of our visitors are international, 30% are from the Wellington area. So, you know, we'd be looking at a 30% type our re-entry role. So I'll just share my screen with you briefly to show you how we've structured ourselves, and then I'll hand you over to Hiri. So what we have done to respond to ourselves having to think about how we do business differently, ultimately we report through to the board. Te Here and I are leading the recovery program group at the second bottom there, and we've set up 4 working groups, HR and welfare, and we've taken a lot of heedance from what happened in Christchurch, future planning, data planning and intel, so where's the information coming in, and the operational work groups. Just before I hand over to Hiri, the one thing that we were talking about earlier today, especially when we got some guidelines coming out from MCH, was we can see that the government and the cultural sector are asking us to try and return to normal as soon as possible. And so I think we're really going to have to question our risk appetite, which is traditionally we're not that risk averse, and we're going to have to really challenge ourselves on that. So thank you for your time, and I'll pass over to Te Here.
Kia ora katoa ko te Herekiekie Herewini taku ingoa. He uri a hau o maunga taranaki te Aotearoa nui, me Ngāti Tōrangatira, Te Aotearoa, Ngāti Mutunga, Ngāti Ronui, Ngā Puhi hoki. Kia ora katoa. So I'm the head of repatriation at Te Papa. So my main role in that position is to ensure the safe return of our Māori and Moriori ancestral remains from overseas institutions. So that's my main job, but for the last 2 weeks I've been part of the recovery group as part of Te Papa, moving our people in a safe way back into our building, and also trying to normalise our business as much as possible. So Craig mainly talked about the commercial side, but I want to talk about our heart. Our heart is really our taonga. Our heart is our connection with the taonga, and our heart is making sure that our taonga are safe and that we maintain the connection with our taonga within our National Museum. So part of that, what we've done is actually bringing in some overarching principles that allow us as Te Papa staff to remind ourselves of our connection with the taonga, but also our connection with hauora. And hauora is that well-being, not only for ourselves, but our families, and also our manuhiri, our visitors that come in, that will be coming back into the museum. We have to make sure that their experience is safe within the government requirements. One of the first things that happened when COVID-19 actually became part of our thinking across Aotearoa, Te Wai Pounamu, Whitiatuki Reo was we had to change some of our cultural practices. And one of the first things that Te Papa had to think about is in respect to tikanga and mihi whakatau and pōwhiri, is what happens at the end of those practices. The normal thing is a hariru, a hongi, or a kihi, you know, to kiss, to embrace. But one of the first things that we actually had to think about, how will we alter our tikanga to also ensure that we safely engage with our visitors, with our manuhiri. And one of the first things that we did decide to do was actually to alter our tikanga so that we can still recognise the importance of embracing, but we'll do it within our separate bubbles. So we decided not to hongi, we decided not to kiss each other, and we decided not to hariru as part of our practices leading up to the level 4 lockdown. And so that's some of our thinking, is that yes, we are a commercial enterprise, but we're also a cultural institution, and we're also an institution that embraces tikanga as part of our practice. Maybe I should say we're a cultural institution that aspires to embrace tikanga as our practice. And one thing I do want to say around tikanga is that all Māori staff that work at Te Papa bring their own understanding of tikanga, and that's important to recognise, that we embrace our tikanga from our respective whānau hapua niwi, and that's quite important for that to be recognised within a national institution. It's not the national institution that actually controls that tikanga, it's actually our tūpuna. Kia ora, that's all I have to say. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Kia ora te Herekiekie. Sorry, I was getting a bit tied up with trying to unmute myself. Just a very quick question for Craig. Did you have staff on site during level 3 and level 4? Can you just explain a little bit about that? That was a question from one of our participants.
Yes, we've had staff on site from level 4, but it's very skeleton staff. We had security, obviously, and we had relationship with anybody that was on emergency standby for break fix, both for physical building break fix and any technology break fix, very minimal. For level 3, we've essentially called it's essential work, and we've been, like a lot of you, using it as a chance to get into the front of house, fix things like air conditioning, fan core units, sort the cafe out, and go through others, but those are very minimal crews. Where people can, if they can productively work from home, they've been asked to work from home.
Kia ora. Thank you, Craig. Okay, we'll now hear from Hiraani Himona from Te Tuhi.
Kia ora koutou. I'm the Executive Director of Te Tuhi. Te Tuhi is a contemporary art gallery in Pakuranga in Auckland. We've got 12 permanent staff and about 150,000 visitors a year through the building. We get about 45% of our funding from council, and 65% of it we raise from commercial activity. So we've been pretty hard hit by the lockdown. I think first I want to say we haven't got all the answers sorted out yet for level 2 opening. Obviously the last couple of days have been all about talking to people about what the implications are of the new guidelines. So we've been talking to all of our staff about how they're feeling, and talking to other people across the sector about what they're planning to do. So the weekend is for me to update our response plan and get it back to our board to sign off after the announcement on Monday. So I'm going to talk about some quite practical things that we've been thinking about and working through over the last couple of days. The first thing is that I'm very mindful that at level 2 we're still being encouraged to use alternative ways of working wherever possible. So for Te Tuhi, the transition to working from home was really easy. We've got fabulous millennials on the team who sorted out all our tech in an instant, and we'd already gone paperless with our finance systems, and we'd already gone cloud server. So there were a couple of people who took computers home with them. Apart from that, it was very straightforward. So in talking to all the staff now about how they're feeling about level 2, we're getting a feeling from everybody about what they would like to do at level 2. And some people want to stay at home and some people want to come back. And because we're a small team, we've been able to accommodate pretty much everybody's preferences. So those people who do want to come back, I am still keeping them working from home about half the time, because I'm bearing in mind that we are supposed to still be limiting movement and contact wherever we can. In terms of staff coming back, we've got small staff and spacious offices, so it's not difficult to maintain distance in the staff. I have locked the kitchens though, because I can't quite get my head around how to effectively sanitize either the staff kitchen or the public kitchen. So we're just going to take those out of bounds. I know lots of people are talking about toilets and whether you have all the toilets open or only some of the toilets open. So we're having toilet conversations this afternoon. I bought everybody a flask, all the staff, because they can't make a cup of tea in the kitchen. So visitors, I mean, we're doing what everybody's doing. It's easy for art galleries. We don't get throngs of visitors at once. Our visitation is steady throughout the day and in small numbers, so we can really limit the numbers of people that are coming in, and we can implement all the systems that we need to for that. However, we have lots of community groups that use our building as well. So the advice we had from Auckland Council at level 2 the last time around was to do capacity of rooms at 10%. And now we're talking about spacing for stranger groups of 2 metres or known groups of 1 metre. So, you know, I'm going through all of the lists of people that use the building and thinking, well, are they strangers or are they people we know? Do we need to space them at 2 metres or 1 metre? Can they come in during the day? Could they come in during the day? It's really a case-by-case basis. Can we sterilise the floors? Not in between every group. So does that mean the yoga classes come in? Maybe not, but maybe the Tai Chi classes can. All of those. It's all case-by-case. We're talking about our schools program. So we've had that conversation at length. We think schools aren't going to want to come in because they won't want to travel and they won't want to be bringing their bubbles into other schools' bubbles. So then we talked about whether our educator goes out to schools and whether that's the potential of turning her into a virus vector, moving from school to school. So we think we will continue to deliver our schools workshops by Zoom into the classrooms. We've been reviewing our opening hours. We're usually open 7 days a week, 9 to 5, but maybe this is an opportunity. We'll open 10 till 4:30, maybe only 6 days a week. I suggested 6 days a week to the team, and nobody's really keen on dropping a day, so I might lose that one. But certainly if we open later in the day, then we've got more time to sterilise everything in the mornings. But of course, again, it all depends on what community groups are using the property. We've been thinking about our comms, and whilst obviously we've lost a lot of income over this period of time, I've increased the comms budget because it's somewhere we've always been under-resourced, and now is not a time we can, you know, afford not to have effective communications. And I've been thinking about the opportunities that present themselves in this situation. Obviously, we're all thinking about the future and how we make change, and I am ready to make change to the world, to learn from this experience and do it differently, if only I knew what that should look like. So I'm going to try and do something, but I don't know what that is. But in the meantime, we've closed our cafe and we won't be opening that at level 2 because, again, I can't cope with trying to think about how we would maintain distancing and hygiene measures in the cafe. But for years I've wanted to establish a learning disability training project in our cafe. And so we're close to the public. And our local residential service provider, ResCare, have a number of service users who've just lost their jobs at Air New Zealand. So together we've cooked up a learning disabilities training project. They're going to come and use the cafe while the cafe's closed. Somehow I have to barricade that off and put up signs to tell people to stay away. But it's been a great opportunity to do something that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. That's it.
Thank you, Hiraani. That's really practical and pertinent to many of the questions which are coming through. So before we go to more of those, I will hand over to Tui.
Sorry. Kia ora everyone, I'm just going to share my screen. So kia ora, I'm Tuhi and I'm the Director of Public Engagement at the National Library. And so it's really awesome to be able to share some of our learning along the way, but also to learn from everyone else. I think one of the most important things that we've learned from the whole COVID-19 experience, and as we were making those decisions going into lockdown, is that it's really important for us to stay agile and flexible in terms of the decisions that we're making. So our leadership team meets every day and we're in constant email communication. We're trying to make the best decisions that we can along the way, knowing that that actually we are often having to revise those within the a few hours of having made them. So we're keeping our eye on obviously the Prime Minister's announcements, whatever guidelines are coming out. We're part of the Department of Internal Affairs, so we have to take guidance from them and part of the public sector, so what guidance they're saying. We also recognise we're part of the GLAM sector and the library system, so we're just mindful of making sure that we stay in sync with what everyone else is doing. And then also, as everyone else has said, it's really important, most of all, is how we are caring for our people. Hopefully this is going to go to the next slide. So I guess the big thing for us is that we're not planning to be open at the beginning of level 2. So we're relating to our approach in 2-week cycles, as much as we're able to, taking into consideration what I said before. So at the beginning, we don't see ourselves being open. That might change, but it won't change certainly for the first week. And we're taking a conservative re-entry approach. So we only had security and cleaning on site in level 4, and under level 3 we only had a very small number, less than 10, that went in their primary roles to make sure that there were no leaks and that collections were safe, and also to receive a lot of the book deliveries that we'd have. When we go back into the space and thinking if that was, for example, next Thursday, Friday, we're going to send in an advanced team. They'll spend that first 2 days getting everything set up. That'll include the signage, setting up cleaning stations, thinking about marking out social distance if we need to do that. The other big thing they need to do is that we completely wiped out our Molesworth building of equipment in order for people to work at home. So we also have to go and just do an audit and see what equipment we've still got. The next week, the first week, would be less than 50 staff going in back of house. Second week, maybe more staff, and then potentially opening to the public on the 2nd of June. As I said, that's all subject to change, but we're trying to just take a phased, careful approach about how we go back into the space, mainly because of people and responding to our staff needs and also to their expectations. So obviously, there's still our vulnerable people who will be encouraged to work from home. And that's not just those that are vulnerable, but those that have vulnerable people living with them or in their bubbles. We did a little survey of our staff. One of the big considerations to everyone is going to be public transport. So actually getting themselves in and out of the building, socially distanced, and having enough, even just enough buses to be able to do that. So I'm sure you're all thinking about that, but it'll be staggered work times. We think that there'll be a lot of splits, even when we do return to some sort of sense of normality. where people might spend half of the week at work, half at home. I think public transit is going to be a major disruption. And then people still have their childcare and other dependents to work through. And even though schools might be open for a number of our staff, they still are very reliant on before and after school care. So they need to work out how that's going to work. There are varying attitudes to returning on site. Some people just can't wait to get back in the building, and other people are quite anxious about it. So like everyone else has said, we're trying to take a flexible approach to that. And people have also, as Craig mentioned, have actually become quite well adjusted to working at home. And so it's actually worked out quite well. But then there are also people are concerned about actually social distance practicalities. So on the way into lockdown, we knew that we had to social distance, but we, you know, in actual practice, we weren't always doing that, and in particular with the lift. So, and it's one of those things that we want to start off as we're going to continue to making sure that we actually embed those practices. So that it's not just the first couple of weeks when everyone's back, we're all gung-ho and then we let it slip. And the big thing that really concerns everyone is cleaning. So we have cleaning crew, but then there's those things like actually, you know, what do we do after we might have gone to the wharepaku and, you know, cleaning that down, cleaning the lift buttons. So people are really concerned about that. You know, so we've developed a bunch of protocols and practices, and our conservators have a great I've really thought about this in terms of like isolating or quarantining books or other collection items they might come in, what cleaning we have to do, the storage, the preservation, the distribution. So I haven't included those here, but we can include those another time. But we've sort of got some protocols in place. We've also developed a control plan. So it's based on actually a health and safety plan developed in the construction industry that my painters who are painting my house at the moment provided to us, which I thought was pretty good. I didn't want to go into all the details because I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about this already, but we're hoping to have inductions for everyone. That might be as simple as providing with a sheet and then asking them to sign it, just so that they know that these are the things that, you know, that we're thinking of, and, you know, and that you're really embedding it, that you're going to do those things. We haven't worked out what the contact tracing system will be, and that's still in development. I saw some great ideas coming through the chat stream. We're thinking about what are the cleaning supplies, ideally in an ideal situation, and when we try to buy cleaning supplies on the way into lockdown, it was pretty hard. Hopefully there's a whole bunch sitting there waiting for us when we go back in, but people will have their own personal supply, and then there'll be stations dotted around the place. And then when the advanced team goes in, we'll be looking at setting up closing some spaces, potentially the meeting rooms, and then opening up some other spaces just to enable us to spread out. And then lastly is when we get to open up to the public. So we may have started appointment only research services for some people. I know that researchers are chomping at the bit to get into the ATL reading rooms to get back into that. We may have started that even earlier than what I'd said before. We're still working that through. We are a landlord. So we have Home Cafe and Himatapihi, and we also have Ngā Taonga Sound Vision on site with us. So we're also just very mindful that whatever we do, there's a whole bunch of us in organisations on site with us that we're not necessarily in direct control of what they do. So, and also they're dependent on us, and when we move, so we're just making sure that we're connecting up all the dots. And that's me. Back to the studio.
Kia ora, Tui. Well, that's a great roundup from everyone. Just a couple of notes. People have been sharing through the chat some great links, which is fantastic. A couple of different links for contact tracing apps, and today MB has produced a contact tracing register template, and we've put the link of that onto the MA website COVID-19 info page. And that has one page which says we require all people on these premises. In fact, I probably shared that screen, I think. That one there. So this is on the, sorry, I just need to move it over a little bit. Yeah. Oops. Don't need to do that. Sorry. I'm just having trouble getting my video off the top of this. I don't want to annotate, I just want to move it. So I'll just move those out of your way. So this is the MB contact tracing register, and the second page is, I don't want to be, sorry, it thinks I want to annotate it. It doesn't think I want to go down the thing. But the second page is actually a sheet for people to fill in. There we go. A contact tracing register. So that is downloadable. You can find it via the government COVID-19 website. Just going back to our questions, some of the more recent ones that came out when Tui and Hiraani were talking about the practicalities. I recall that one of the people I was talking to in the CBD in Auckland was saying that they were going to be offering their staff, when they came back for essential work, free parking, so that they didn't have to navigate the difficulties of public transport. And that would mean that they would probably have to provide them with free vouchers for a local paid public car park. And that may be something which some other museums might be able to do to help their staff to actually gain access. In terms of, people have been asking about health and safety plans. There are a few of those that I've shared on our website too, and I hope that more of you will be able to share your plans. The construction industry one is an excellent one, and there are others that different museums are creating as well. One of the recurring questions that's been coming up in the chat is around volunteers, as well as not just vulnerable staff, but volunteers, particularly in smaller institutions. I wonder, maybe Rowan, you might have some thoughts about the volunteers, particularly those who don't necessarily feel safe coming back, but you want to maintain your contact with them and your engagement with them.
Yes, sure. We have been in contact with all of our volunteers throughout this entire alert level situation. And we have been providing them with work that they can do from home, and so they've been enjoying doing that. The most important thing they wanted really was just keeping up contact. With regards to them coming back in level 2, they're not all over 70, but some of them are, and there is potential that they could be at risk. The first thing for them to do is check in with their doctor to make sure that they are okay with them coming back into a working situation. We wouldn't have our volunteers in our public spaces, so they would be in the team areas, which is great for physical distancing and sorting out different choke points and things. We're good for that. So it's a case by case, really, for them. But we are absolutely ensuring that their health and safety is paramount if they do decide to come back to us.
Kia ora. Another question is about the actual difficulties of what if something goes wrong when you do have the public back and you're operating under the COVID-19 distancing restrictions. Maybe Craig or Te Herekiekie could talk about that, about what you've done to update your disaster plans. So, for instance, what happens if there's a fire alarm or a flood?
To be quite frank, we haven't got there yet. All I can say is what all the other speakers spoke about are things that are happening at Te Papa, so very affirming to hear that everybody's dealing with the same things. With regard to how we do things differently, though, we'll be thinking quite carefully about how we do exit people carefully. But you know, what came out from the Prime Minister yesterday and the MCH today as well was the model that people are looking for is personal personal resilience and personal, just looking after themselves, really. We've been living in this state for a long time. And so we'll be designing our disaster recovery or our exit recovery and all those sorts of plans based on, people being self-aware, but also a wee bit like it was said earlier, we'll be having, limited numbers in the building, I suspect.
So if you have limited numbers in the building, will you be offering guided tours?
Not at this stage. We're like the rest of you, a lot of our hosts fall into high-risk categories. They're quite often retired folk. So we need to make sure that the people that offer those products and services within Te Papa are comfortable across that. Our main thing is what's the minimum, we're very much using agile approaches here. Tui, I love that. And one of our things is what's the MVP to get the museum open? So we really want to think about what's the staged approach. Can we just get, the art gallery open? Can we get Gallipoli open? Can we get this open? So, the catch cry this week is don't overthink it.
Yes. There've been a few notes about hygiene and the actual practicalities of that. One of the questions was, do you actually open the public bathrooms? How do you stop more than the minimum number of people going in? How often do you have to actually clean the door handles and the lift buttons? One of the people in the chat, thank you Emily, had suggested an idea to inspire visitor confidence is to embrace the idea of the theatre of hygiene, to do constant cleaning in front of visitors so that they can see the door handles being wiped and the lift buttons and the touch screens, etc. It's like having the hand sanitizer there at the entrance to the hospital. It means that if everybody uses it, you feel safer. Craig, would you like to say anything about that?
Yeah, look, prior to going into level 4 lockdown, I think we were on a 15-minute cleaning regime going through all of those. That comes at a cost. But I think exactly as you said, it was about the public perception of things being clean. We're also quite interested in etiquette. So, we've been thinking about how you use toileting facilities, and it could be as simple as, knocking etiquette before you go through double doors. And, applying it, allowing people to be safe and feeling secure.
Does any of our other presenters have any thoughts about the guided tours or the hygiene aspects?
Can I jump in, Philippa?
Please do, Hiraani.
We haven't reviewed our emergency plans. I need to add that to my list of things to do. Thank you to whoever raised that. But we did review our first aid protocols already. So we've got N95 masks in case we need to do CPR. We've changed our protocols so that the first thing is call an ambulance. Don't treat people yourselves in order to be able to maintain distancing. So yeah, that's it.
It's excellent. Any
Could
other?
I just, make a comment about disasters and emergencies? If I can give you a heads up from police that in the event of a disaster or an emergency, the usual protocols apply over and above COVID-19 protocols. So it is about saving life first and foremost, and then worrying about COVID-19 after that. So don't hesitate. If you've got a disaster or an emergency, do what you know you should do.
That's excellent advice.
Yep, there's been a question about Te Papa and its contact with iwi regarding the taonga that they may have within Te Papa. And so that's one of the things that we've been focusing on over this week and we'll next week. One of the interesting things around Te Papa is that it's a touchy-feely museum. So our exhibitions are all about touching things, touching objects. But people also touch the taonga. So the whakairo, the waka, and other taonga that are there. And when it comes to, I suppose, hygiene, the cleaning aspect of cleaning taonga is quite interesting because it wipes away the mauri. Once you clean it, you wipe away the mauri. And so what what we are thinking is that maybe it might be best for people not to touch with their hands, but just to touch visually the taonga at this stage, and to rope off the wharenui, rope off the waka, rope off our Māori stone, not only for health reasons, but also that if people start touching things and we have to wipe them consistently for the next 6 months, it actually alters the taonga as well. So kia ora.
Kia ora te Herekiekie. That's something which was raised in some of the discussion in the chat earlier on, and there were some comments and questions about how the taonga had been maintained, how the kaitiakitanga had been maintained, particularly during the shutdown. I think it's quite clear that all of our museums and galleries take this responsibility very seriously and have been doing their utmost to make sure that Māori is protected. I'm hoping that we might have another hui in a week or two, which might delve into some of those aspects in a bit more detail. So kia ora for that. Another question which has been coming up is around funding streams. And as Craig mentioned earlier on, even when opening up, Te Papa is not going to be able to generate the revenue that it was before. And so I've heard this morning in a different context, in the context of tourism, that the hotels, for instance, are saying it's actually better to be open with just a few rooms occupied than to be completely closed. So I'm hoping that is the spirit that's going to maintain our willingness and our desire to be open for the publics as public museums and galleries for that connection. There has been a budget bid, as has been mentioned in the chat, through MCH for a funding package, a support package for arts, culture and heritage. We don't know about exactly what's in it. And we have been told we have to wait, like everyone else, till the budget next Thursday to find out the answers to that. However, I did watch Honourable Grant Robertson's pre-budget address yesterday and to the Wellington Chamber of Commerce, and in the Q&A he was asked a question about that, and he was reasonably encouraging. He did say that all the three arts, culture and heritage ministers are particularly aware of the difficulties that our sectors are going to be having going forward, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. I wonder if anybody of our presenters has given any thought to those new ways of working going ahead, which might generate different income streams, or is it too soon to think about that yet?
At Te Papa, we've those 4 work groups that I showed you on that slide. One of them is future, is basically devoted to the futures, and it's not just based around revenue generation, it's also based around different audience experiences as we move past the next 3 to 18 months. So the other 3 groups are very much focused on the now, and our commercial teams are looking at the business models about how we do conferences, and they're thinking about all the obvious digital type things. But the futures group is very much being led through an audience experience, and there is a genuine understanding about how we might generate revenue off some of those things. At the same time, keeping in consideration, you know, our absolute desire to share the national collection and not charge for that. So it's a real fine walking line, that one.
Yes, it certainly is. Various ideas have come up in some of the international forums, such as offering, you know, very small group behind the scenes tours which are paid for, those sorts of things. One of the other ones was new merchandise, art printed face masks. I wonder if anyone else has had any other brilliant ideas on that front. Hiraani, I know you were working on some of the other ways of keeping artists engaged. Perhaps that would be a segue into that discussion.
Oh, look, I'm short on ideas. I wish I wasn't, but I'm reading as much as I can about what everybody else is thinking about what's going to happen. The conversations that we're having are around how much do we do digitally and how much do we wait to do in real life. And of course, there's an amazing amount of fantastic digital content from museums and galleries around the world out there now. And some of us are feeling swamped by the tidal wave of it. And whilst there's a ton of really, really good stuff, some of it really isn't. So how much we participate and how much we add to people in that way is something we're thinking about. And that's really for the future as well. How much is digital in the future in our world? And you know, VR was the way of the future, right? And now we can't touch things other people have touched. So that's not the thing. And also Te Tuhi is basically 50% national, 50% international artists in our program. And there's the discussion around how much do we stick with the internationality or how much do we come back to being more local? And I'm convinced about both of those things. We need to be more local, but we also still need to take the opportunity to be taking part in this, what suddenly is a global conversation. So no, I'm just struggling. I don't know what any of the answers are.
Yeah, someone had mentioned the domino effect of international or exhibition programming. And obviously that's something that you've begun to think about, Hiraani. I wonder, Tui, do you have any thoughts on that kind of future programming aspect?
I guess, well, going back to the revenue streams, in my area, we have our commercial functions as well. We also have a conference offer, we also have a retail store, we also have the Te Puna Foundation. So our foundation and partnerships manager has been doing a lot of work researching, you know, what will be the future of fundraising moving forward. And, you know, and we're competing now with every other group that hasn't been able to go out and do their fundraising for this time. So it is a tough environment. I guess we're a little bit protected in the National Library because we are, yeah, we're slightly more insulated for the moment, and we'll see how that pans out. I think the question you're asking is was a lot of call about when to start offering public programs again under level 2. I think I just go back to what we said. We're just approaching that in the 2-week blocks. So the first thing is just get our staff back, get everyone feeling comfortable to be back in the space, and then we'll review that. I think the other thing that's consideration is, I guess, the sentiment. So you know, like we can make all these calls, but then we just don't know what people are going to feel like. And it may be that actually within a couple of weeks, New Zealand is feeling like we're returning back to normal. And so, you know, being able to offer, you know, more programs will be quite easy. But then we don't know what's going to happen with the virus or whether that's going to change. So I think that's why I think it's just really important that you just sort of stay open, be prepared, but just be prepared to also to change.
Bye. There have been a few comments and queries around forewarning visitors, about actually informing visitors what they might expect when they are able to come back to your premises. Do you have any plans for that, Tui?
Yeah, no, so we've got, actually, it's probably something I should have said before, we've got a big stakeholder plan. There's a lot of people that we need to keep up, you know, up to date with what we're doing. And so it runs to 3 or 4 pages, and we've got a sequencing of who we need to let know at different times. But main sources of communication for us are obviously our website, our social media channels, and we'll have signage up around the library.
Thank you. Hiraani, you wanted to contribute?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
Sorry, I did earlier.
That's all right. I apologise for that. I'm not sure if I missed that. We're just about at the end of our hour, and our contributors have shared some fantastic insights. I wonder if each of you would like to just make any last comments. Hiraani, since you're just there.
Oh, no, not really. I guess, yes, I think it's a great opportunity for us to learn from each other, and this kind of collegial thing that has come out of this has been the best thing for me.
Kia ora. Tui.
Just really want to acknowledge Museums Aotearoa. You know, obviously we would have been heading off to the conference, and we're not doing that now. That keeps popping up on my calendar. But you know, thank you for your advocacy. You know, there's been a few comments about the, an MCH bid and whatnot, and then, you know, so just thank you for everything that you've done. And it's lovely to see everyone's faces. Thank you.
Rowan.
Just a thought around education and public programs. We would not envisage starting those again until level 1. And I don't believe the public will have an appetite for them either. I think they're going to be very cautious to begin with. So we're just going to invest our time in ensuring that the museum is as attractive to them as it can be, that they are just using their eyes and learning that way. And yeah, we'll follow up when the time is right, and we will reinstate our education public programs then.
Goodbye. Craig.
Well, firstly, thank you, Philippa, to you and Museums Aotearoa. Totally support what Tuhi said. Look, through Victoria Essen, we're more than happy to share things as we learn. Funnily enough, we haven't got a massive library of how to react to this sort of event, and so we're creating things as we go as well, and we are more than happy to share and care. So if we haven't thought to, feel free to reach out through Victoria.
Kia ora. So just before I hand over to Herekiekie for any of his further thoughts and closing, I just want to make my huge thanks to all our participants. It became a much bigger hui than we had anticipated, and I hope that everybody who's listening has got something out of it. We will make the recording available, and we will also make sure that we capture all those shared links and suggestions and put them onto the MA website. I also thank Victoria Essen and the National Services Te Parangi team for working with us on this, and look forward to working with them again on future hui. And thank you to everybody who zoomed in to join us this afternoon. Noho ora mai. Te Herekiekie.
Nō reira, kanui te mea te rā kia koutou I tēnei wā tatania te whakakapi o tēnei huihuinga. Nō reira ki Museums Aotearoa kei te mihi. Kia koutou e mātakitaki ana e whakarongo ana. Tēnā koutou katoa. To our speakers, thank you for your contributions. And I think we've got a lot of food for thought. So I'm just going to say our closing inoi. So kia inoi tātou. He honore he korore ki te atua, he maunga runga ki te whenua, he whakaaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa. Kia tau kia tātou katoa te ata whai o tō tātou ariki a ihu koraiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, amene.